"He's not coming," the server whispered softly as she placed the glass of water down. In the middle of the upscale restaurant, a beautiful woman in an elegant red dress sat alone. In front of her was a table set for two, but the chair across from her remained empty. Customers began to whisper, "She got stood up." A few laughs rippled through the dining room. From the corner of the room, Daniel, a single dad working as a janitor, caught sight of her trembling gaze. He set down his tray and walked over. "No one should be left alone in a situation like this." She looked up, her lips quivering slightly. No one knew. This was the CEO behind an entire corporation. Daniel was 36 years old, a single father with a tall frame, handsome but weathered from life's struggles. He worked as a janitor and part-time server to support his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. His life followed a simple rhythm. Mornings were for taking Lily to school, evenings for work, and weekends belonged entirely to his little girl. Every day, Lily would slip a small note into his lunchbox with messages like, "Daddy, remember to smile more." These little reminders were his lifeline, keeping him grounded in what truly mattered. That evening, the restaurant was packed, and Daniel had been assigned to serve the VIP section. The upscale dining area buzzed with conversations, clinking glasses, and the soft murmur of important business deals being discussed over expensive wine. Claire Meyer, 27 years old, sat gracefully at a corner table. She was stunning. Fair skin, long blonde hair, wearing an elegant red dress that spoke of both sophistication and understated wealth. But her beauty couldn't mask the anxiety in her eyes as she continuously glanced at her watch. As the minutes ticked by, other customers began to notice. Whispers started at nearby tables, followed by poorly concealed snickers. The woman in red had clearly been stood up, and in a place like this, that kind of social embarrassment became entertainment for others. Daniel watched from across the room as one customer seemed ready to make a mocking comment. Without thinking, Daniel caught the man's eye and gave him a calm but firm look that said, "Don't even think about it." The customer looked away, suddenly interested in his own meal. Daniel approached Claire's table and quietly placed an additional glass of water beside her existing one. "Sometimes," he said gently, "the person we need most arrives late, but no one should have to wait alone." Claire looked up at him, surprised by the unexpected kindness from a restaurant employee. In her world, service came with expectations and ulterior motives. This felt different, genuine. As Daniel turned to leave, he paused and added, "Take your time. There's no rush." During his break, Daniel opened his lunchbox and found Lily's note of the day. This time, she had drawn a picture of a father and daughter holding hands, with the words, "Daddy always knows how to stand next to people who need it." Daniel smiled softly, tucking the note into his shirt pocket. Lily had an uncanny ability to remind him of who he wanted to be, even on the hardest days. He glanced back at the woman in red, still sitting alone, still waiting. The dining room had mostly moved on to their own conversations, but Daniel could see the isolation settling around her like a heavy coat. This wasn't just about being stood up on a date. There was something deeper in her posture, in the way she held herself. A loneliness that went beyond one disappointing evening. Daniel had recognized that look because he'd worn it himself for months after his wife's death. It was the expression of someone who had learned to expect disappointment, who had armored themselves against hope because hope had let them down too many times. But tonight, for reasons he couldn't quite explain, Daniel felt compelled to make sure she didn't leave the restaurant feeling invisible. Sometimes the smallest gestures mattered most. Not because they changed everything, but because they reminded someone that they were worth noticing. As he prepared to return to work, Daniel made a quiet decision. He would keep an eye on her, not intrusively, but enough to ensure that if she needed anything, even just a refill of water or a kind word, someone would be there to provide it. In a world that often felt indifferent, sometimes being seen was enough. As the restaurant began to empty and the dinner rush wound down, Claire remained at her table. Most of the other customers had left, but she seemed reluctant to face the outside world. Daniel approached with a dessert menu, his manner gentle and unassuming. "Maybe something sweet to end the evening," he suggested. "Then you can head home early and take care of yourself." Claire looked up and laughed softly, the first genuine expression he'd seen from her all evening. You talk like a father? Maybe because I'm a father, Daniel replied with a warm smile. That simple exchange opened a door between them. Claire found herself staying longer, drawn into conversation with this unexpected source of comfort. She told him she worked in business, keeping her true identity deliberately vague, and shared that tonight had been a blind date arranged by her mother. Did you actually want to be here tonight? Daniel asked, his question direct but kind. Claire paused, considering her answer. No, but I promised my mother I would try. Daniel understood the weight of promises made to parents, especially when those promises conflicted with personal desires. He shared his own story. Losing his wife, raising Lily alone, the daily balance between exhaustion and motivation that defined single parenthood. From his pocket, Daniel pulled out a small paper airplane that Lily had folded for him that morning. He placed it gently on the table between them. She makes me one of these every day. Says that no matter how bad the day gets, there's always something that can fly. Claire stared at the delicate paper creation, something shifting in her expression. When was the last time someone had shared something so personal, so innocent with her? In her business world, every gesture had an agenda. Every conversation had a purpose beyond human connection. That's beautiful, she said softly, touching the airplane's wing with one finger. Lily would say you're supposed to make a wish and then let it fly, Daniel explained, but I usually keep them. They remind me that hope doesn't have to be complicated. Claire picked up the paper airplane, holding it carefully as if it were made of something more precious than paper. Your daughter sounds wise. 7-year-olds usually are. They haven't learned to complicate simple truths yet. As they talked, Claire found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't experienced in months. There was no performance required, no image to maintain. Daniel listened without judgment, responded without agenda, and treated her simply as a person who'd had a difficult evening. Can I tell you something? Claire said, her voice quieter now. It's been so long since I've had a conversation where I wasn't afraid of being judged. Daniel nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Judgment usually says more about the person doing it than the person receiving it. Where did you learn to be so steady? She asked. Daniel considered the question. Grief teaches you what matters and what doesn't. Raising a child alone shows you that kindness isn't weakness, it's strength. And watching someone you love suffer teaches you that everyone's fighting battles you can't see. Claire felt tears threatening, not from sadness, but from the unexpected relief of being truly heard. I spend so much time being what other people expect me to be. Sometimes I forget who I actually am underneath all of that. Who are you underneath all of that? It was such a simple question, but Claire realized she hadn't been asked it in years. People asked about her company, her strategies, her 5-year plans. No one asked about Claire the person. I'm tired, she admitted. Tired of performing, tired of having every decision scrutinized, tired of feeling like I can't trust anyone's motives. She paused. I'm someone who just wanted to have a normal conversation with a kind person, and somehow found exactly that. Daniel smiled. Sometimes the universe provides what we need, not what we asked for. As the evening wound down, Claire reluctantly prepared to leave. The real world was waiting outside. The world where she was CEO Claire Meyer, where every action was analyzed and every relationship was potentially strategic. Thank you, she said, standing to gather her things, for treating me like a person instead of a problem to be solved. Everyone deserves that, Daniel replied simply. Claire walked toward the exit, then turned back. The paper airplane, what should I wish for? Daniel thought for a moment. Wish for the courage to be yourself, even when it's inconvenient for other people. As Claire left the restaurant, she clutched the small paper airplane in her hand. For the first time in months, she felt like someone had seen her, really seen her, and had chosen to be kind anyway. Outside, the city hummed with its usual energy, but something had shifted. The evening that had started with disappointment and embarrassment had transformed into something unexpected. A reminder that genuine human connection still existed, even in the most unlikely circumstances. Daniel watched her go, hoping that whatever challenges waited for her in the outside world, she would remember that tonight Someone had chosen to stand by her when she needed it most. He didn't know he had just comforted one of the most powerful women in the city. But even if he had known, Daniel suspected it wouldn't have changed how he treated her. Everyone deserved kindness, regardless of their position in the world. The next morning, Daniel's quiet world was turned upside down. The restaurant buzzed with excited whispers among the staff, and phones were being passed around showing news headlines and photos. CEO Claire Meyer stood up during arranged date, read the morning business section. The accompanying photo showed a woman in an elegant red dress, the same woman Daniel had comforted the night before. Daniel stared at the headline in shock. The woman who had laughed at Lily's paper airplane, who had shared her fears about being judged, who had seemed so genuinely grateful for simple human kindness. She was Claire Meyer, CEO of Meyer Group, one of the most powerful business leaders in the city. The staff were divided between fascination and gossip. Some felt sorry for her public embarrassment. Others whispered that even powerful people weren't immune to personal disappointment. But Daniel felt something different, concern for the person he had met, not the public figure she represented. That evening, Claire returned to the restaurant. Daniel could see the tension in her shoulders as she walked directly to his section, ignoring the curious stares from other customers and staff. Outside, he noticed the subtle presence of photographers waiting near the entrance. She approached his station quietly. "Thank you," she whispered, "for last night. For staying with me when you didn't know who I was, not because of who I am." Before Daniel could respond, the situation escalated quickly. By the next day, business publications were running stories about CEO Claire Meyer's crisis of image and demanding explanations for her public appearance of vulnerability. The storm intensified when shareholders and board members expressed concern that their CEO's personal life was becoming a distraction from business operations. Emergency meetings were called, and Claire found herself defending not just her professional decisions, but her right to have human moments. "The optics are terrible," one board member declared during a heated meeting. A CEO getting stood up, staying late talking to restaurant staff, "It makes the company look unstable." Claire's response was swift and sharp. "If you want a puppet, you chose the wrong person." Meanwhile, Daniel became increasingly worried that his presence in Claire's life was causing her professional problems. He knew how precarious his own position was, a single dad working multiple jobs to make ends meet. The last thing he wanted was to become a burden to someone who had shown him unexpected kindness. He approached Claire after her next visit to the restaurant. "I think I should find work somewhere else," he said quietly. "I don't want to be the reason you're having problems with your company." Claire looked at him with a mixture of surprise and determination. "Don't you understand? Your normalcy, your genuine nature, that's exactly what I need in my life. Not more people who see me as a stock price or a quarterly report." The situation came to a head during the next board meeting, where shareholders demanded that Claire distance herself from any distracting associations to protect the company's reputation. Claire stood up from the conference table, her voice calm but steel-edged. "Let me be clear about something. The only person who didn't abandon me that night was a single father working 2 jobs to support his daughter. I choose to keep people like that in my life, not push them away to satisfy people who've never shown me the same loyalty." The room fell silent. Board members exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly not expecting their CEO to take such a firm stand on what they considered a personal matter. "With respect, Claire," said the lead shareholder, "this isn't about loyalty. It's about maintaining professional boundaries and company image." "No," Claire replied. "This is about whether you want a CEO who makes decisions based on fear or one who makes decisions based on integrity. Because I'm telling you right now, I will not sacrifice genuine relationships for the comfort of people who see me as a commodity." The confrontation sent shockwaves through the business community. Some criticized Claire for prioritizing personal relationships over shareholder concerns. Others praised her for showing authentic leadership and refusing to be controlled by image consultants and board politics. Daniel watched the news coverage with growing concern. He saw Claire defending her choices in interview after interview, always maintaining that her personal relationships were not subject to corporate approval. But he also saw the stress it was causing her. The woman who had seemed so grateful for simple kindness was now being forced to justify that same kindness to rooms full of people who viewed human connection as a liability. One evening, as Daniel was finishing his shift, Claire appeared at the restaurant again. This time she looked exhausted, not from the work, but from the constant battle to maintain her humanity in a world that wanted to reduce her to a business function. "I won't let them turn me into someone who's afraid to be decent to people," she told him. "That's not who I want to be, regardless of what it costs me professionally." Daniel realized that Claire wasn't just fighting for her right to be kind to him. She was fighting for her right to remain human in a role that often demanded otherwise. The board wanted a CEO who made calculated decisions based purely on profit and image. Claire was insisting on being a leader who valued people over perception. "Are you sure this is worth it?" Daniel asked, genuinely concerned for her well-being. Claire smiled, the first relaxed expression he'd seen from her since the story broke. "Do you know what I've learned from all this? The people who are angry about me treating you with respect are exactly the people whose opinions I shouldn't be worried about." That evening, as Daniel walked home to Lily, he realized that Claire's fight wasn't just about him or their unlikely friendship. It was about the kind of leader she wanted to be, the kind of company she wanted to run, and the kind of world she wanted to help create. Sometimes taking a stand meant standing up for principles that others found inconvenient. And sometimes the most radical thing a person in power could do was refuse to be afraid of showing genuine human decency. The public was watching, the business world was divided, but Claire had made her choice. She would rather be a CEO who treated people with kindness than one who was controlled by fear of what others might think. 3 months after the media storm began, Claire announced the launch of Stand By You, a comprehensive support program for single parents. The initiative provided childcare assistance, flexible work programs, and professional development opportunities, all inspired by her conversations with Daniel about the unique challenges of raising children alone. The announcement transformed the narrative around Claire's leadership. What had started as criticism about her personal choices evolved into recognition of her innovative approach to corporate social responsibility. Business publications that had once questioned her judgment now featured her on covers as a forward-thinking CEO who understood the real challenges facing working families. Daniel found himself in an unexpected position. Claire had offered him a role coordinating logistics for the Stand By You program, which meant stable hours, better pay, and benefits that would provide security for Lily's future. For the first time since his wife's death, Daniel felt like he was building towards something rather than just surviving. The program's headquarters buzzed with activity. Daniel worked alongside social workers, child development specialists, and business professionals who were all committed to making life easier for single parents. His unique perspective, someone who had lived the challenges they were trying to address, made him invaluable in designing practical solutions. One afternoon, Lily visited the office after school, as had become routine. She had adjusted to her father's new schedule with the resilience of children, excited that he seemed happier and less stressed than she'd seen him in years. During her visit, Lily approached Claire with a small paper airplane folded from colorful construction paper. "Miss Claire," she said solemnly, "you can fly too if someone holds you steady." Claire knelt down to Lily's level, accepting the gift with tears in her eyes. "Thank you, sweetheart. This is the most beautiful airplane I've ever seen." Lily beamed. "Daddy says you help other daddies and mommies now? That makes you a superhero." Claire laughed, pulling Lily into a gentle hug. The child's simple perspective cut through all the complexity of corporate politics and media scrutiny. To Lily, Claire was simply the nice lady who made her father smile more often. The transformation in Claire's relationship with her own company was remarkable. Employees who had once seen her as distant and unapproachable began to understand her as someone who genuinely cared about making their lives better. The Stand By You program wasn't just good public relations. It was a reflection of Claire's authentic values. Daniel watched Claire during staff meetings, seeing her confidence grow as she found ways to align her personal beliefs with her professional responsibilities. She was becoming the leader she had always wanted to be, rather than the one others expected her to be. One evening, as they worked late planning the next phase of the program, Claire turned to Daniel. "Do you know what's funny? The board members who were so worried about my image are now bragging about the positive media coverage we're getting. People are more comfortable supporting kindness when it comes with good publicity, Daniel observed. Exactly. But I've learned something important. I don't need their approval to do the right thing. I just need their cooperation. The program's success created a ripple effect throughout the business community. Other companies began implementing similar initiatives, and Claire found herself invited to speak at conferences about leadership and corporate responsibility. But the most meaningful moments weren't the public recognitions or business awards. They were the quiet conversations with single parents who told her how the program had changed their lives. The children who could stay in after-school care while their parents worked late. The families who no longer had to choose between career advancement and childcare. Daniel often accompanied Claire to these events, not as her employee, but as her partner in creating something meaningful. They made an effective team. Claire's strategic vision combined with Daniel's practical understanding of what families actually needed. One particularly memorable day, a photo of the three of them, Claire, Daniel, and Lily, sharing lunch in the company cafeteria, went viral on social media. The image captured something authentic. A CEO who had created a workplace where employees could bring their whole selves, including their children. The caption that accompanied the viral photo read, "This is what leadership looks like when it's driven by humanity instead of hierarchy." Daniel framed a copy of that photo and hung it in his small apartment. Not because of the attention it had brought, but because it represented a moment when Lily could see her father as someone who was building something important, someone whose work mattered beyond just paying bills. Claire had given him more than a job. She had given him a sense of purpose and a way to turn his experiences as a single parent into something that could help others facing similar challenges. As the program continued to grow, Daniel realized that their unlikely friendship had created something neither of them could have built alone. Claire's resources and position, combined with Daniel's lived experience and practical wisdom, had generated real change in people's lives. The woman who had been stood up in a restaurant had become someone who stood up for others. The single dad who had offered comfort to a stranger had found a way to extend that comfort to hundreds of families. Together, they had proven that sometimes the most powerful partnerships begin with the simplest acts of human decency. 6 months after the Stand By You program launched, it had helped over 2,000 single-parent families across the city. Daniel had been invited to speak at a national conference on workplace flexibility and family support. The first time in his life he would be addressing an audience as an expert rather than just a beneficiary of programs designed to help people like him. Claire sat in the front row of the conference hall, her eyes bright with pride as Daniel took the stage. Watching him speak confidently about the challenges and triumphs of single parenthood, she marveled at how far they'd both come from that night in the restaurant. The most important thing we've learned, Daniel told the audience, is that supporting families isn't just good social policy, it's good business. When people don't have to choose between being good parents and good employees, everybody wins. The applause was thunderous. After years of feeling invisible in the workforce, Daniel was finally being recognized as someone whose perspective mattered, whose experience had value beyond his ability to clean floors or serve tables. After the conference, Claire approached him with an envelope. "I have something for you," she said, her smile mysterious. Inside was a drawing that Lily had made during one of her after-school visits to the office. The crayon masterpiece showed 3 stick figures, a tall man labeled Daddy, a smaller figure labeled Me, and a woman with yellow hair labeled Miss Claire. They were all holding hands under a rainbow with the words "My Family" written in Lily's careful 7-year-old handwriting. Claire's voice was soft as she explained, "Lily gave this to me yesterday. She said I could keep it if I wanted to be part of your family for real." Daniel looked at the drawing, then at Claire, understanding the weight of what she was saying. "And what did you tell her?" "I told her," Claire said, taking his hand, "that I would need to ask both of you if there was room for one more." Daniel felt his heart catch. Over the months of working together, of sharing meals and stories and dreams for the program's future, something had grown between them that went deeper than friendship or professional partnership. They had become a team, supporting each other through challenges and celebrating each other's victories. Lily, who had been waiting nearby with the conference organizers, suddenly appeared at their side. "Miss Claire, did you show Daddy the picture?" "I did, sweetheart," Claire said, kneeling down to Lily's level. "What do you think? Should we all be a family together?" Lily's response was immediate and enthusiastic. "Yes, now we are three." She threw her arms around both adults, creating a spontaneous group hug that several conference attendees captured on their phones. Later, as they sat in Daniel's small apartment, sharing a simple dinner of pasta and salad, Claire marveled at how right it felt. The home wasn't large or luxurious, but it was filled with warmth, laughter, and the kind of authentic connection she had spent years searching for in all the wrong places. "You know what I realized today?" Claire said as they cleaned up the dinner dishes together. "All those board members who were worried about my image. They were right that knowing you changed me. They just didn't understand that the change made me better at my job, not worse." Daniel smiled, drying a plate as Lily colored at the kitchen table. "Maybe the best leaders are the ones who remember what it feels like to need help, or the ones who remember that behind every employee, every customer, every stakeholder, there's a person with their own story, their own struggles, their own dreams." As they tucked Lily into bed that night, the little girl looked up at them with sleepy contentment. "Are you staying forever, Miss Claire?" "If that's okay with you," Claire replied, brushing Lily's hair back from her forehead. "It's okay with me. Daddy needs someone to take care of him too." Outside, the city hummed with its usual energy, full of people pursuing success, power, and recognition. But inside Daniel's small apartment, they had found something more valuable, a family built on understanding, respect, and the simple decision to stand by each other. True power isn't about position or wealth. It's about choosing to lift others up when they need it most. If you believe in these stories that touch the heart like this one, leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe to Hidden Heart Stories. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten. Real people are creating and telling stories, not mass-produced AI.